Right.
No, it's just
It's just that, yeah.
more in benefit.
You just need a new cable or something?
Attention to yourself.
Right. One of the things that draws. And they get the vacancy back. It happens for them.
That's always how it seems to be.
We're good to go. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Do I start? Do I start?
If you're interested, I'm happy to provide you.
Sad but funny.
Everyone went
I'll-
to a room in my brain.
Good morning, everyone. Today is the March 5th JLMBC regular meeting. We are now starting.
All right, is there any public comment? We'll go. Oh, we have to do take attendance, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I'm getting used to this.
Okay. Okay, we will go through roll call, starting with the management organization first, then the employee organization. Malika Billups,
Present.
Tony Royster,
Here.
Matthew Rudnick, Paul Girard in for Matt Sable,
Present.
Todd Bowie in for Patrice Latimore,
Present.
Janita Iguelar,
Here.
Marlene Fonseca,
Here.
Chad Boggio,
Here.
Esteban Lazardo, Lisa Palombi. We have quorum.
Did you?
Okay, at this time, we will take public comments. If you are participating via phone, please press 9 and announce yourself. If you are in the room, please bring your speaker card to the front desk. Okay, it does not look like we have attendees on in the queue or in person.
All right, good morning, everybody. We'll move forward to the action items. Action item number 3, committee report 2604, staffing reimbursements for the first and second quarters of fiscal year 2025-2026.
Good morning. This report is the staffing reimbursements for the first and second quarters of fiscal year 25 and 26. This is covering the staffing services provided by the Employee Benefits Division from July 1st to December 31st of 2025. The total amount of reimbursements for approval are a total in the amount of $1,366,554.65 for the LA Well program and $195,488.59 for the Live Well program, for the Live Well Wellness program sub-account. As noted in the report, back in May of 2025, the JLMBC did approve adding additional positions from staffing positions for reimbursement. So this may reflect higher than previous years due to having additional positions being covered for reimbursements. So the request here is to approve those reimbursements from the Employee Benefits Trust account to the Personnel Department. Are there any questions at this time?
No questions. Can I get a motion? A second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Okay. We will now take a roll call vote for this item, for this report. Malika, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Todd, your vote.
Aye.
Janita, your vote.
Aye.
Marlene, your vote. Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa, your vote. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Okay, we'll move to item number 4, committee report 2605, cash in lieu survey update.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm Stella Jurado of the Benefits Division, and I'll go over the cash and survey update with you guys. So as a reminder, under the Cash and Lieu Incentive Program, full-time employees, regular full-time employees are eligible to receive $100 per month. And regular half-time employees under certain MOUs are eligible to receive $50 per month. It should be noted that city employees who are family members are not permitted to be duly covered within the LAWA benefits program. Enrolled both as an employee and as a dependent of their spouse or domestic partner. If one employee elects LAWA medical plan at the employee and spouse or domestic partner coverage or family coverage, the other employee must elect cash in lieu. As of January 1st, 2026, there are 1,399 employees enrolled into the Cash in Lieu Incentive Program, of which 8.37% are covered by another city employees for medical coverage. So at the October 3rd, 2024 JLMBC meeting, report 24-33 was adopted by the JLMBC, and staff was directed to research and report back recommendations on potential changes to the Cash in Lieu Incentive Program. Committee report 25-13, which included a draft Cash in Lieu program survey, was presented at the JLMBC meetings on both April 3rd, 2025 and May 13th, 2025. The purpose of the survey was to determine the number of employees who are enrolled into the Cash in Lieu program due to having health coverage outside of the city, either on their own or as a dependent through their spouse or domestic partner. And to learn more about the reasons why they choose not to elect into Cash in Lieu, the JLMBC approved staff's recommendation to carry out the survey and employee outreach to identify any possible modifications to the Cash in Lieu program. The survey was distributed via city email to all city employees on May 17th, 2025, and it concluded on July 17th, 2025. It consisted of 15 questions, 4 of which were specifically related to the Cash in Lieu program. The remaining questions focused on demographics and employee recommendations for the Cash in Lieu program. The survey garnered 1,853 responses. Attachment A to this report is a copy of the survey results, and attachment B is a copy of the fully drafted survey that was presented to the JLMBC. So staff reviewed the Cash in Lieu program details as part of the ongoing evaluation of the LAWA program to determine any potential changes, such as increasing the Cash in Lieu incentive amount. The review was prompted by the JLMBC's directive to revisit benefit incentives in light of recent trends. So I'm going to present the following information as a more detailed discussion of staff's analysis. Staff asked Keenan and Associates, one of the city's benefit consultants, to help gather data from other public organizations in order to compare the city's existing Cash in Lieu amount with industry norms. Data collected from 6 local and similar organizations is displayed in the table on page 2. 4 of the 6 public entity organizations surveys say they offer Cash in Lieu program that varies according to memorandum of understanding. The data collected indicates that the monthly contributions made by these organizations to their Cash in Lieu program vary from $54 to $303 per employee. So compared to these organizations, the city's Cash in Lieu program incentive level is generally on the lower end. So as part of the review, staff examined the financial impact to the city under different scenarios when Cash in Lieu eligible employees decide to enroll into Cash in Lieu and or enroll into an LAWA medical plan as a subscriber or as a dependent under another employee's LAWA medical plan. Attachment C to this report contains a list of the LAWA medical plans and cost for the 2026 benefit year. So the first chart on page 3 shows the per pay period cost of employee-only medical coverage as well as the Cash in Lieu benefit amount. The scenario for this chart depicts an employee who is enrolled into Cash in Lieu and has non-city medical coverage. The city saves approximately $9,091.92 to $9,691.92 annually in this case. The city's cost would not include any medical plan subsidy, and it would be limited to the Cash in Lieu incentive amount, which is between $600 to $1,200. The second chart scenario depicts a situation in which two city employees are married or have a domestic partnership, and each elects to enroll into their own Aliwal medical plan under the employee-only level. When two city employees are married or have a domestic partnership, each employee may elect to enroll into their own Aliwal medical plan as a subscriber. In this scenario, each employee is enrolling in the same medical plan as a subscriber, but each one can opt to enroll into a different Aliwal medical plan. The city's cost would be limited to the premium of each employee's Aliwal medical plan, which can range from $20,583.84 to $37,922.88 annually for both employees. On page 4, we have a scenario where two employees are married or have a domestic partnership, and employee A enrolls into their own medical plan at the employee and spouse/DP level, or chooses to add employee B as a dependent under their plan. Employee B elects cash in lieu. So when two city employees are married or have a domestic partnership, they can also elect to enroll in a combination of the Aliwal medical plan and cash in lieu. In this scenario, employee A can elect to enroll in the Aliwal medical plan at the employee and spouse/domestic partner level and enroll employee B as a dependent. Employee B would elect cash in lieu. The city's cost would include the premium for employee A's medical plan and employees B cash in lieu, and can range from $23,843.52 to $27,745.92. The first chart provided indicates that maintaining the current cash in lieu incentive amount is the most cost-effective option for the city. Employees who have non-city provided medical plans can opt to enroll into cash in lieu instead of an Aliwal medical plan. In this scenario, the city's cost would be limited to the annual cash in lieu amount. Staff would need to obtain more data on the total number of employees who have non-city provided medical plans in order to make a more accurate assessment of the annual potential savings. Although the survey results in attachment A, question 10, show that 30.3% of respondents have a spouse or domestic partner whose non-city employer provides benefits, it is unclear how applicable the survey size is to the larger Aliwal population. Additionally, a significant portion, 37.3 to be exact, of respondents declined to answer question 10A, despite the survey's attempt to assess employee choice and perceived quality and value of non-city benefits. Although it appears challenging to do so, it could be potential to attempt to gather more information in this area. According to the open feedback questions according to the open feedback responses in questions 12 and 13 of the survey, many employees favor modifications to the cash in lieu program, but many of others are concerned about the changes. Staff views these responses as challenging towards gathering honest, accurate, and comprehensive information. The scenarios in the second two charts, where two city employees are married or have a domestic partnership, indicate it is more economical for the city in most instances for each employee to be enrolled into their own Aliwal medical plan than it is where one employee enrolls into cash in lieu and is covered as a dependent under another city employee's medical plan. The savings range here is from $3,259.68 to $3,392.16. After researching and reviewing the different information and numbers, staff concluded that maintaining the current cash in lieu incentive amounts provides a limited financial benefit to the city. However, the effectiveness of the current cash in lieu option will vary annually depending on the pricing of Aliwal program medical premiums and the distributions of cash in lieu recipients between Aliwal and non-city coverage. Increasing the cash in lieu incentive amount would definitely boost enrollment, but would also increase the city's costs without necessarily providing proportional savings to the city. A scenario where cash in lieu incentive amount is increased to encourage more employees to enroll into cash in lieu for non-city medical plans will result in the most significant cost savings for the city. Furthermore, the data suggests that the city could potentially increase its cost savings if the cash in lieu program was to be modified to eliminate cash in lieu option for city employees who are enrolled as a dependent under another City of LA's employee well medical plan. And the cost for the 2 or 3 premium exceeds the cost of separately priced tiers at the same medical level plan. For example, doubling single-party premium remains lower than the 2-party premium. Eliminating cash in lieu for these employees is estimated to provide the city with an annual savings of $129,000, and that's based on current enrollment information. Staff recognizes that there is a potential value in increasing the cash in lieu cost for employees enrolled into non-city medical coverage, but it needs more time and information before a recommendation can be fully developed. Staff also recognizes that paying cash in lieu benefit to employees enrolled as a dependent under another city employee is a situation the city does not, excuse me, I lost my track. So we also recognize that paying cash in lieu benefit to an employee enrolled as a dependent under another city employee in situations where the city does not recognize any premium savings is a practice that should not continue. Since the annual premium and subsidy menu will change each year, staff is considering a proposal to identify which plan coverage tier combinations of each medical plan can permit a cash in lieu payment for a city employee covered by another city employee. This proposal is not being considered to limit choice, just payment of cash in lieu. In order for staff to develop the proposal, confirmation of proposed plan premiums is required. Therefore, staff would like to develop a full proposal of cash in lieu program modifications for employees who cover other city employees as dependents and bring it to the JLMBC in line with the adoption of the 2027 LA Well benefit menu. So our recommendation is that JLMBC receive and note the results of the cash in lieu survey and approve staff's recommendation to maintaining the current cash in lieu incentive amounts available to employees and approve potential modifications to the cash in lieu program for employees who are covered under another employee as a dependent. Medical plan as early as 2027, pending approval and adoption of the 2027 rates. Information. Any questions?
Yeah, how often does it happen that the city plan charges more for one 2-party plan than it does for 2 1-party plans? Is that something you covered?
I think that we would need to take a look at the rates historically and do a comparison. That was not examined as part of this exercise here, but we can certainly look at it and see in the number of instances where the cost for each employee to be enrolled in their own versus the 2-party plan would cost more or less.
It just seems that there may be other ways to be able to try and regulate that. And I mean, also it seemed like there was a lot of respondents that said that they weren't aware of the cash in lieu program. So have we thought about like what it looks like to do more education to let people know about it?
Yes, if you
Before
see
we,
in
like-
questions 12 and 13, I believe the respondents are requiring more information or promotion of the cash in lieu.
I don't have any more questions.
So we definitely can do that.
Do you have a number of employees that would be impacted? I mean, that would lose this $100?
As of right now, the information we ran was 114 employees covered as dependents under another city employee's medical plan.
Is that through your survey or through your records?
That's by running reports of the coverage matching names with other city employees. However, one of the things that we weren't exactly sure is I don't believe we took into consideration running social security numbers. So we believe that number might be a little bit higher because our dependents we don't require a social security number for our dependents to be enrolled into our plans. So 114 is what the current number we came up with, but we believe it might be a little bit higher because I don't think we took social security numbers into consideration.
And what is the dollar savings on that 114?
Current plan year, that's $129,000.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Janita asked mine, actually.
Okay. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion on the staff recommendation.
Are you asking us to approve the elimination of this $100?
No, we're
for
asking you to
candidates?
approve the possible modification.
We will be, doing a further review of this, if, once this, report is approved. And if there are any changes, we will be presenting it back, in a future meeting, to be adopted as part of the, benefits program for 2027.
So you're asking us to,
Right now, is it just about getting more data? and
To
more
approve,
ins-
us to go forward with, looking at getting more data, trying to assess, whether, it is, whether we should be moving forward with removing that cost in lieu option for a certain, group of employees who,
We're
are.
bringing a report back.
Right,
Yes.
yeah. So just to clarify, the staff recommendation is to report back, specifically direct staff to report back on a potential modification
And to maintain the current,
Yeah.
in the interim. Do we need to? Well, I'll entertain a motion if somebody has a motion.
I'll move approval. Second.
Okay, we will, begin, roll call vote for this, report. Malika, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Todd, your vote.
Aye.
Janita, your vote.
Yeah.
Marlene, your vote.
I,
Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa, your vote. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move to committee report 2606, dependent eligibility verification to the DEV audit timeline and communication campaign update. And when the speaker comes up, please be sure to use the microphone. Speakers in this case, it seems.
Good morning, Karina and Gabby here to present to you our project updates and recommendations for the dev audit. Just a little background, at its December 4th meeting, the JLMBC adopted the committee report 25-42 and selected Secova Inc., also known as Secova, to provide dev audit services for the LAWell program. Since the committee confirmed Secova as the selected vendor, staff has been meeting regularly with Secova to prepare for implementation. Several activities have been completed or are underway. Staff has finalized a comprehensive documentation verification guideline. This guideline reflects the most current eligibility policies and includes clear examples of acceptable and unacceptable documentation. Additionally, staff is preparing a simplified, employee-facing version of the guideline to promote clarity and transparency during the audit process. Staff in Secova has also begun drafting and reviewing outbound communications. And as a reminder, Secova intends to implement a 3-wave outreach process consisting of emails, automated calls, and SMS text reminders. Staff will also supplement vendor outreach, and a draft communication plan is included later in this report. Staff has requested a detailed report from TELUS to determine the number of documents currently on file and under review. And in addition, staff is working with the city's ITA team and Secova to evaluate the implementation of single sign-on capabilities. The objective is to provide employees with seamless access to the audit portal, making document upload and review as user-friendly as possible. Through careful evaluation, staff has determined that certain dependent categories involve policy nuances, privacy concerns, and documentation complexity that make them better suited for internal review rather than inclusion in Secova's external audit. For the disabled and overage dependents, this group requires certification through medical carriers and involves protected health information. Because these determinations are conducted by fully insured medical carriers, it would be inappropriate for Secova to review this documentation. Staff will instead reconfirm eligibility directly with carriers during the audit timeframe. For adoption and legal guardianship, court documentation varies significantly across jurisdictions and often requires individualized interpretation and review. Given the complexity and relatively small size of this population, staff will conduct these reviews internally with consultant and legal support as needed. For grandchildren, this is a unique longstanding dependent category under LA Well with pre-Affordable Care Act rules involving education and tax verification. Due to its small size and unique requirements, staff will handle these reviews directly. Domestic partners. For domestic partners and child of domestic partners, they will be removed from Secova's audit process. For city-issued domestic partnerships, staff will require recertification under the most current city affidavit, which was updated in 2022. Because the city domestic partner affidavit is self-attested and historically has been subject to the rule changes, this step is intended to ensure consistent compliance and mitigate any potential abuse. State of California domestic partnerships will also be reviewed directly by staff through targeted outreach. And as noted previously, the alternative action for these groups is for staff to perform an internal review outside of the dev audit for these small dependent populations.
Thank you, Karina. Good morning, everyone. So we have determined that the implementation of the dev audit should be divided into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is scheduled to begin in mid-March, and this is a soft audit of dependents currently in coverage with supporting documents on file. This covers approximately 12,000 dependents for Secova's initial review. Now, phase 2 encompasses a second audit of phase 1 dependents that did not meet eligibility requirements and the remaining population of employees that currently have at least one enrolled dependent with no supporting documentation. This represents roughly 8,000 city employees with approximately 17,000 dependents. Employees will be required to submit approved eligibility documentation by a specific deadline in order to keep their dependents in coverage. An appeal process will be available for members that fail to provide documentation, and staff is currently working on finalizing the details of that process. Staff and Secova have been working together on outbound communication notices, such as informative letters, verification forms, email reminders that will be sent to employees to notify them of the dev audit and note respective deadlines. The objective is to ensure that employees understand the purpose of the dev audit and have sufficient time to prepare should they need to submit supporting documentation for their dependents. Targeted communication and continuous follow-up reminders will be sent out to those employees who have not taken any action. Staff and Secova are maintaining an implementation timeline of upcoming project deadlines and action items to ensure that phase 1 of the dev audit stays on track as currently scheduled. To conclude, we ask that the JLMBC approve our recommendation as follows. Receive and note the update on work with Secova. Approve the proposed timeline of a two-phased dependent audit approach, approve the draft communication plan concept, and direct staff to report back with monthly updates on the audit process. Thank you.
How long do you anticipate, like just roughly, phase 1 and phase 2 would take? And maybe you won't know until you have a better sense of the information that's coming in, but
At this time, we currently don't know the exact timeline just because we have an estimated number, which Gabby mentioned. It's about 17,000 just in phase 2.
Mhm.
So I'm not too sure. We're expecting at least potentially about 2 months.
Okay. Do you know how long the last dev audit took?
I'm not sure.
I don't recall offhand. It's been, I think the last dev audit was in 2013.
Yeah.
But I don't know the duration of how long it took to complete from, start to end.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
we can report back.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Were there any removals from the voluntary period?
Oh, during October? So that time was only meant for employees to voluntarily provide documentation. It's those employees that provided documentation were part of phase 1. Well, are going to be part of phase 1. So it's just a voluntary action of like, we can.
Okay, right. How about, folks who like chose that period to remove anyone that was ineligible? Were you able to track that or not?
Employees, do have that opportunity to remove dependents during, during open enrollment, members do have the opportunity to do so. Unfortunately, we don't have data as to how many employees, voluntarily remove dependents beforehand, with the knowledge that the dev audit is coming up.
Right. Yeah. No other questions.
Okay. Any motion? Question.
So the voluntary portion in open enrollment
Mhm.
by trying to formulate the question. By how much of the workload was reduced by voluntary disclosures? You said that that's part of phase one, right?
Mhm.
So the information you collected will be given over to
Sokoba.
the vendor, so they'll use that
Mhm.
as part of phase one work. Do you know how much of that workload was reduced by voluntary disclosures?
I don't know off the top of my head, we'd have to look, but out of the numbers altogether, it was only 12,000, like estimated 12,000 dependents, so about 6,000 employees submitted documentation. And then it's a remaining 8,000, so
Oh, so well, that's
It's
a
a
good
good- it was a
number.
good
Yeah, so
number, yeah.
14, the population of 14,000,
Yeah.
6,000 of those 14,000.
yeah.
Okay. That's decent. Okay,
Yeah.
that's, no need to follow up on it.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you help, maybe walk us through the thought process of removing domestic partnerships from the audit and their dependents? I've read it, but I'm just not following what supports the idea or to do that.
Just for clarification, we are just removing removing that process away from Sokoba, and it will be done by staff.
Oh, okay, that was lost on me. Thank you
Yeah.
for helping me understand that.
So we are still going to be reviewing domestic partnership, but because this is a city, most cities, most city employees who are enrolled in domestic partnerships, they enroll under the city's domestic partnership program, and because of that, and all the most of the information is handled by city staff already. We felt it was more appropriate to have that piece reviewed by city staff as opposed to having Sokoba do it, because our form is not, it is specific to the city and not necessarily something that is used, a more common form like the marriage certificate or birth certificate.
So thank you.
And just to give kind of a little background. So we were kind of running the numbers. So about 95% of our domestic partnership population is through our city domestic partnership affidavit. And it has changed over time. So we have seen that a lot of our population for the domestic partners have attested in a very old and not the updated form. And we are potentially looking to make updates, as again, it's always changing, the rules are changing. So that's why we were moving forward with potentially having them recertify.
So what are the qualification differences in the state form or whatever, the state program?
Not too
I
sure.
mean, I
sorry.
know the 6 month,
Mhm.
6 month between partners, but
It used to be 1 year, so that was one of the changes with our domestic partnership forms over the year. So if I remember correctly, in 2022, we reduced that 1 year wait to 6 months to be in line, I believe, with the state form.
I mean, could it result in people being disqualified? It could, right?
Disqualified, I'm not sure. I think it's more of
Eligible.
it would be more just to mitigate potential abuse, because the form necessarily, they're not submitting any additional documentation rather than just them agreeing that they are in a domestic partnership and then signing it and submitting it. And they're not required to submit this on a continuous basis. It's just a one and done. And a lot of members we have seen historically do not submit termination when they have terminated their domestic partnership.
Paul just wants to add to this.
I'm not sure if
Paul?
you can hear me okay, but
Yes.
yes. Well, when we were talking about this all through on having them reattest to, it was exactly that. It was the termination concern. 11 employees from the older ones were not agreeing to the same termination language, and we see common practice of employees not terminating or submitting termination promptly. So to see that risk under the current or the older format of continuing domestic partnership coverages for domestic partners who are no longer the employees of the partner.
Thank you.
This might be an obvious thing, but so for employees who've had children and enrolled their children at that point, are they going to be asked to resubmit birth certificates and things, or is that just in the system already?
Are you talking about child and domestic partners?
No, just straight up children of employees.
During this dev audit?
Yeah.
Most likely there are approved documentation. So it depends on whether that we have an approved documentation already on file, whether the phase one, they'll be reviewed. If the documentation is reviewed and approved, then there's no further action that is needed from the member.
So if the children were born 16, 17, 18 years ago, and they were enrolled at the time of their birth with a birth certificate, that's going to be someplace, or is everyone going to have to dig out everything?
So one of the issues that we've had with our previous system was that there was not a way for us to receive and store documentation. So with the new system that we have now through TELUS, we do have the capability to receive and store the documents. So there is a portion of our member population where we do have their documentation, their marriage certificate, their birth certificates that they submitted for their enrolled dependents. So for phase one, we are looking to be submitting all of those documentations over to Sokovia for review, plus the documentation that employees were encouraged to submit in advance of the dev audit during open enrollment. So the hope is that with phase one, we would be able to review as many of the dependents as we can for where we have documentation. And for phase two, we would only need to follow up and communicate with those members where we don't have the documentation on file and where they did not actively submit those documentation to us during open enrollment.
During open enrollment, those people were identified and messaged about having to do it?
I believe.
Because I would think, as somebody who has an older child, I didn't get any specific message saying I needed to submit his birth certificate from a million years ago. So I didn't even think about doing it because I figured I submitted it when he was born. So why do I have to do it again?
Mhm.
And I can't be the only person who will.
I don't recall if we did
No,
individual
we
communication
didn't do
or just.
individual communication at the time. I think during our open enrollment kind of email blasts and notifications, we did announce that the dev audit was up and coming. And there was an option for certain members within the portal to upload documentation, but there was no specific targeted outreach at the time.
Okay. Make myself a note.
Find that thing. Any more questions?
So that would make me a phase one person or a phase two person if I did not during open enrollment.
If we don't have your documentation on file for your dependents, then you would be phase two.
Phase two.
Okay. Thanks.
But that's if her documentation is not on file.
Yeah.
It may very well be.
So you don't know, you could be.
Yeah. You don't know. All right. Any more questions? Okay. Is there a motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Thank you. We will now take roll call for this vote. For this report. Malika, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote. Todd, your vote.
Aye.
Janita, your vote.
Yes.
Marlene, your vote.
Aye.
Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa, your vote. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
All right. We're moving to item number 6, Committee Report 2607, Procurement Updates for Plan Year 2027.
Okay, for this report, I will be presenting. So this report is, as like I said, regarding the procurement updates for the upcoming benefit year. So, every year in the lead up to open enrollment and the upcoming plan year, there are a number of administrative related items that, must be done in order to, finalize the rates and services for the upcoming year. So on page 2 is a list of the current benefit providers for both the LAWell and LiveWell programs, as well as the related contract status. Staff is recommending that negotiations start staff is recommending that we begin with negotiations with Ameriflex, Anthem, Blue Shield, Delta, Kaiser, Optum, the Standard, and UHC for plan year 2027 services and costs, and also to report back on the contract extensions for the Anthem Blue View Vision, Delta Dental, and Optum contracts, which are currently set to expire at the end of this year. The results of both will be brought back to the JLMBC at a future meeting for consideration. On the next page, we have an update on the EFAP RFP. From the prior RFP, there were concerns raised over the reduction of services, and staff was directed to look into alternative service models for the EFAP. Alternative options were looked into, but staff is recommending that we keep the current full package EFAP service model at this time, but look for ways to control costs without decreasing or impacting services. A self-insured EFAP could potentially provide the city with a way to do this, but would require a new RFP as the self-insured option isn't an option that's available on the current contract. A proposed timeline of this RFP process is listed on page 4. So for this item, staff is recommending that the JLMBC approve the draft RFP concept, approve the finalization and the release of the EFAP RFP, and to approve the draft pledge for the RFP. For the next item, staff is recommending that the JLMBC approve the, for the next item, staff is, sorry, let me go back again. For this next item, this is regarding the third-party record keeper services. The current TPA contract was recently extended in 2023 for an additional 5 years, and it is currently scheduled to expire in 2029. Although that still sounds like it's a long ways off, any TPA transition is a long process, and sufficient time is needed to issue the RFP and to allow for a smooth transition should a new system or vendor be identified through the RFP process. Staff will be bringing this item back to the JLMBC in a future meeting for further discussion. Moving on to the life, AD&D, and disability insurance. Currently, the life and AD&D benefits are provided by MetLife, whereas the disability benefits are being provided by the Standard. All 3 contracts are currently set to expire in 2027, of which the Standard contract is currently undergoing city approval for the amendment. Staff is still considering the directions to take with the contracts for these services, but is anticipating that a recommendation will be made to the JLMBC later on how to proceed for these services. And then lastly, on page 6, we have a self-fund update. So the self-fund or ASO, Administrative Services Only model has been under consideration for some time now as a potential way for the city to control costs. The dental and vision benefits were identified as the benefits, where the city can opt to try the self-fund model. And the option to do so is available within the current contracts. But in order to transition to the self-fund option, 2 requisite steps were identified. The first is the need to hire a HIPAA compliance officer, which we have done so with with our promotion of Mindy Lamb for this position. The second was to set up a protected reserve account. In reviewing the available options for us to do so, a fully independent trust fund was viewed as the best option for this. Staff is currently working on drafting the concept for this fully independent trust fund concept, which could potentially be established by this summer. Staff is also working with Keenan on the next steps, which includes identification of the required minimum financial amount needed for the reserve fund, as well as the transition process to move from a fully insured to a self-insured model. Any transition to the self-funded model would require sufficient time to implement, so the current plan is to continue with a fully insured model for 2027 for now, until we can complete the funding process for the self-funding model, and also to finalize the transition plan. Updates on this item will be brought to the JLMBC on a future meeting. So to recap, we have several recommendations for this report. One is direct staff and consultants to begin negotiations for the 2027 year service and costs. Two is to direct staff to report back on the contract extensions for those contracts that are scheduled to end on at the end of this year. Three would be to approve the EFAP RFP. Four would be to approve the pledge form for the EFAP RFP. Five would be to receive and note the RFP updates. And six would be to receive and note the self-funding implementation update.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take motions on the staff recommendation. Or did you have a question?
A quick
ahead.
question. So, and if you covered it, I'm sorry.
Yes, no worries.
But how does so the transition to the self-insured model, how does that coordinate with extending the contract? Or are you guys asking for us to choose one or the other? Does that make sense?
Well, we are looking at the potential possibility of transitioning from the self-funded model to a self-insured model. So the extension is, Paul and Keenan, if you could correct me if I'm off base here, but the contract extension would just be to extend the services for an additional year to 2027, or for an additional 2 year if we choose to exercise that option instead. The transition is a separate option for us to, if the city decides to move from the fully insured to the self-insured option. If we do decide to do so, the contract does allow for it, but we would need to extend the contract into 2027 to allow us to continue having Delta either provided the service under the fully insured model, or a specified set of services under the self-insured model. So hopefully I explained that clearly.
Yeah. I'm satisfied.
All right, any further discussion?
So we're not making the decision today about switching to self-funded, and we would have plenty of time to have robust discussion about what
Correct.
it's going to look like in the.
There are still some prerequisite steps that the city, that staff needs to work on, before moving forward with this. If we are going to do so, we would be, that would be, reported back to the JLMBC in a future meeting.
Like, how would the fund be protected, or how would the appropriate amount to transfer?
If I remember correctly, we do need to determine an appropriate minimum amount, and one of the prerequisite steps would be to set up a protected trust fund, to protect this amount from, potentially being affected by other outside influence.
Okay.
I don't want to have us run down a rabbit hole with that, because it's kind of early, but who would administer the trust fund? Who would the trustees be? Would that be a function of this committee, or be independent of that?
I don't have.
Good morning, Gordon Darn with Keenan.
So almost immediately when you self-fund, say it's a January 1st date, the expectation is that your members will continue to use the dental plan or the vision plan as they have. They'll incur claims, and those claims won't be presented for payment until February, March, or later in January. So the money that is paid to the two carriers during that time is really just the administration fee. So a reserve needs to be set up with the city of LA through finance so that the direction will from the carriers will be, they will ask then for a transfer of funds out of this reserve. In the same token, during the first couple of months, you will be establishing a surplus reserve because of what I explained, the delay from incurred to paid. And so that reserve will always be in that account as well too. And then over time, should the plan perform at the expected or a lower level, any margin surpluses will stay in that too, rather than transfer over to the carrier. So the carrier is just really, we're paying a monthly administration fee, and then they're giving us direction relative to wiring funds to them out of this reserve account. And that's, it'll be held in trust with the city with, I'd imagine the same finance department that pays premiums. We'll have to set up a special claim account there so that those things can happen.
Understood. Thank you.
What about
Thank
the
you, Board.
trustees? Is-
I think Paul Mikowski wanted to comment on this. Paul, please go ahead.
The intent as it's currently envisioned, would it be most likely personnel department as the authority over the fund that we're going to set up, with the intent that the benefit trust fund that the JLMBC is currently in charge of is being used for lots of different purposes. So it's being also used for salaries, it's used for any administrative expense. We want this special fund to be used only exclusively for reserve costs of the special fund allocations, whichever one they end up being, 2 benefits, 3 benefits, whichever ones with limited scope. So that's the plan we're going with, but we're still working on drafting up the ordinance, drafting up the language, and we'll bring that forth back to you guys hopefully soon.
Any further discussion? Any questions? Is there a motion?
I was like, for real this time.
Okay. Any motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. We will begin the roll call for voting. Malika, your vote.
Aye.
Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Todd, your vote.
Aye.
Janita, your vote.
Yes.
Marlene, your vote. Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa, your vote. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Move to item number 7, Committee Report 2608, Authority for the Civilian Benefits Program Plan Document. We welcome Steve back.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Montagna, and I'll be presenting this report. This is a follow-up report to one you heard at your last meeting regarding restatement of the plan document for the LA Well program. So at the last meeting, we had presented the plan document materials for your consideration, but not actual action. We wanted to give you more time to look through the information. We knew that there was a lot there. We also had indicated that in the next report, we would be addressing the governance framework for the plan document and how this would work under the admin code. So our first thought on this is that we would be recommending that the council, when this went to city council, that they would be doing 2 things. One would be actually adopting the plan document, and then the other would be making the changes to the administrative code to provide for the ongoing maintenance of that document. It would be under the authority of the personnel department as recommended by the JLMBC, which is consistent with how this body acts now. However, after further review, we realized that having council approve the plan document itself would be inconsistent with its past practice and also how it has handled other benefit programs within the city. So the preferred approach would actually be for council to delegate the creation and adoption of the plan document to the appropriate administrative body rather than approve the language itself. Before we basically were going to have the JLMBC Act first and council after, we recognized that that was basically putting the cart before the horse, and we needed to reverse the order. The way that this would work with under the administrative code is we would have the council recognize the existence of the plan document, which it does exist currently, but it would recognize it within the admin code, and then it would delegate the authority for the adoption, the preparation, ongoing maintenance. In terms of a process, the way that we would proceed is after recommendation of this body, we would submit a request to the office of the mayor, and we would be seeking the amendment of the language within the administrative code. Mayor's office would review that and then move that forward to city council. Only after the council has acted would we come back to the JLMBC to recommend approval of the plan document. So that basically gives you more time to look through all of that content. One other final point that I just wanted to mention is that at the top of page 4 of the report is the specific language that we contemplate using. This hasn't been reviewed yet by the city attorney, but we wanted to be very intentional about making sure that this language was placed outside of the language currently in the admin code, which basically frames the roles of the JLMBC and the personnel department with respect to benefit design. So we're not trying to tinker with that. We don't want to. The language that we're proposing would really just be one sentence that would be added to at the end of that role framing language. And that's because the plan document is really a compliance document. So it's only intended to reflect rather than create changes to the benefits program. Our recommended action for you is basically to provide your support of this recommended course of action. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any discussion? All right. Thanks for setting us straight. Is there a motion?
I move.
Second.
Move and a second.
So we have a move, a second, and a third, I think, or 2 seconds. Yes.
Thank you all. Will you begin roll call vote? Malika?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Janita?
Yes.
Marlene? Chad?
Aye.
Lisa? The vote is unanimous. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the informational items. We're going with item number 8, benefit provider presentation from TELUS.
Morning, board members. Steve Murphy with Siegel Consulting, and I'll introduce the TELUS Health presentation and provide some context, and then they'll proceed. So easy to say, unprecedented, the number of choices and options that were offered during this open enrollment period. I think the city historically has run what we would describe as a passive enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, the only people that would make benefit changes at open enrollment were those who were making changes to their flexible spending account or some other items. So again, we had a lot of work that we put into the open enrollment process to prepare for what we thought would be a lot of activity. Compared to 2025, which we'll use as a base year, we actually saw about 2,300 employees make changes. That number, relatively small compared to about 27,000 covered employees. And again, I think what we saw was that the work done by city staff and TELUS, particularly with regards to mapping, where we tried to kind of target where members were associated with in terms of medical groups and trying to place them in the appropriate plans based on those choices. So I think that worked out very well. Again, a lot of anticipation in terms of being responsive to employee needs during this new period of time and offering choice. TELUS Health Service Center, compared to previous periods, performed very well with regard to average speed to answer, low call percentage abandonment rates, et cetera. And that, in spite of what we found were average talk times, it averaged almost 13 minutes. So for members that did get through and had questions, they were able to serve that. I'd also note that city staff also provided a buffer to take those employee questions. So again, I think a kind of good dual effort and brought some good results. Not surprising based on historical trends, but 49% of all enrollment activity occurred during the last 2 weeks. The typical open enrollment period for the city is 5 weeks, which is generally a little bit longer than what we see for most plan sponsors. Staff and TELUS recognize that the number of kind of receipts or enrollments they were receiving were kind of behind kind of trends, so they added an additional 6 week. But even doing that, 49% of members made that decision at the end. So again, I think kudos to staff and to TELUS for kind of being able to manage that. But in terms of overall highlights, probably not a surprise, the distribution across plans, HMO plans, PPO plans remained about the same. So 80% of members favor an HMO style plan, whether it's Kaiser, Blue Shield, or UHC. Kaiser Permanente's enrollment share remains steady at about 63%. Probably an anomaly or what we anticipated. We took a very conservative approach to mapping. Best examples, we were looking at members that were affiliated with Cedars-Sinai or UCLA and trying to figure out where we would map them to. Neither Harmony, UHC's Harmony plan, or Blue Shield Trio offered access to those two members. So we took a conservative approach and mapped them to the UHC signature value plan, which was kind of the top end of the line. And what we saw though is that members actually chose to enroll in the Blue Shield Trio plan and the signature value Harmony plan with UHC, the lower cost plans, at a higher rate than we had anticipated. So again, there were some positives there. And lastly, aggregate PPO enrollment actually increased by about 7% year over year. You offered two options, the traditional PPO plan, and you also offered a high deductible health plan. And we actually saw about 120 employees elect that plan option, which is a bit of a change. So again, that's kind of a very high level overview, and I'll turn it over to TELUS to walk us through the actual material.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephen. Hi, my name is Amy Kivior. Good to see you all this morning. I'm the client service manager at TELUS Health supporting the city of LA. So I'll certainly go ahead and walk you through some of the high level enrollment activities for the open enrollment period for 2026 before we dig into some of the data and the results of that. So as Stephen mentioned, it was an active enrollment, right? It's, kind of technically passive in that if people did not make an open enrollment election during that window, they would retain the benefits they had with that exception to that medical plan mapping. But we're calling it an active enrollment simply due to the fact that the city was really encouraging folks to take an active enrollment opportunity during the window. A lot of communications for that. So as Stephen mentioned, that open enrollment period was extended by 1 week. So it was actually 6 weeks total. That actually required some configuration for the IVR for the call center, education for the call center representative taking calls, some portal or website updates to make sure that that open enrollment election was available for that extra week. So a little bit of activity there to support that. Also on the employee portal or the website was kind of a brainchild of the employee benefits department. We created a new widget or tile that was kind of the one-stop shop for open enrollment. So it had the link there to enroll, it had FAQs, it had the communications that were available on the medical plan mapping, a lot of links there that were available to employees to click if they wanted to maybe schedule an appointment at City Hall or a list of all the benefit fairs that were available. So a lot of good information in one single tile on our portal. So a lot of activity was done in terms of the call center to reduce the IVR callback threshold. So this actually was discussed in last year's JLMBC meeting. The threshold was actually 10 minutes, which is kind of a high threshold so that if somebody was waiting on hold to reach a representative during open enrollment, they wouldn't be offered a callback for up to 10 minutes. So based on feedback received from the JLMBC, actually in discussions with the EBD, we actually reduced that threshold to a minute. Yeah. So, if anybody was waiting on hold for 60 seconds or more, they would be offered a call back in waves of about every minute or so. So that actually did make a pretty significant difference. I think it certainly enhanced the experience for folks calling in during that period of time. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So certainly in preparation for the open enrollment period, the EBD team did have or host Culture Day training sessions with our call center representatives to make sure that they were, well educated on all the changes that the city was making, things that the city wanted to focus on, particularly the medical plan mapping, how to update the primary care physician if the employee wanted to do so on our website. So also another aspect is that medical plan mapping letter. So TELUS Health's communications team did draft a series of letters that were mailed out to city employees for all medical enrollments in 2025. So whether it be Kaiser, and they were going to be mapped to Kaiser for 2026, they would still have received a letter in the mail saying, you're in Kaiser in 2025. That's what you'll be mapped if you don't make a change. But certainly that was pivotal for the folks that were enrolled in an Anthem plan in 2025. So it educated them on what plan they would be mapped to if they didn't take action, and which, dependents would be covered on that plan, things like that, next step. So that was important. And that was also hosted on that tile one-stop shop on our portal. Also, our team did support the 11 benefit fairs so that, the city EBD team was supported in any questions or enrollments that folks wanted to make at these benefit fairs, they could do so. So we were able to support that as well as we have in years past. One thing to focus on in terms of activities is there's actually an increase of about 9% of enrollments from 2025 to 2026, be it over the phone or on the employee portal by city employees themselves. That's pretty significant. I think that just goes to show that those communications done by the city did work. And that folks were certainly enrolling actively at a higher volume for 2026. Lastly, on this slide, I'll just call out, we did also create a particular life event. And I think this kind of came up earlier, is the life event was generated just to create a link on the employee portal on our website so that folks that had not added their dependents in the time of our administration since April of 2019, folks could submit their dependent verification documentation in advance of the audit. So there were links on our site that were hosted to allow folks to do that. And those links remained through the end of the year. We can move on to the next. So there were, just want to call out some of the system updates that were made both prior to open enrollment and during. There was the implementation of a single sign-on from the city's site to our site. That way folks did not have to recall their credentials or reset passwords. They could simply click a link after they're already logged in on the city site and kind of get right into our site, which was really helpful. Just calling out some of the changes, and we've talked about these a bit. Of course, there was the creation of the new carrier files for United Healthcare and Blue Shield, creating those new benefit plan options in our system, creating the primary care physician information in our system so that folks could enter that information in our system directly, and we could pass that over to the vendors on carrier files for the new plan year. So that was new configuration. And of course, the custom communications for the medical plan mapping that were sent out as well. Of course, we did retain the Anthem as the vision vendor. So there were modifications that needed to be made to that vendor file to make sure that we weren't passing medical and just passing the vision. Calling out some premium rates and regulatory changes. There were rate updates for medical and disability plans. It's pretty typical. And there were, of course, increases to IRS plan maximums for the tax advantage spending accounts. So the healthcare flexible spending, dependent care reimbursement accounts to $3,300 and then $7,500 this year for the dependent care, which is pretty big. Certainly, also, as we do year over year, we made updates to the open enrollment guides that are housed on our employee portal for employees, as mentioned. And we did continue to use the city's fulfillment group to go ahead and mail out the personalized enrollment worksheets as we've done year over year. So we can go ahead and move on. This slide is really just kind of calling out the medical plan enrollments by plan type. So this is just talking HMO, PPO, the cash in lieu, and the high deductible health plan. So what you'll see here in pretty simple visuals is it's relatively unchanged from 2025 to 2026, though there were, significant changes to your medical vendors, medical plans available. You're looking at, from 84.27% HMOs in 2025 to 83.60 in 2026. What you will see here is the certain increase in the PPO plans. If you, kind of combine the PPO and the high deductible health plan, you'll see that there's certainly a higher enrollment volume in the PPO plan types for 2026. But we'll dig into that a little bit more as we go on to future slides. This slide here looks a little busy, right? We wanted to make sure there was kind of one slide that houses both the enrollments for the 2025 medical plans, which you'll see in the larger pie chart on the left-hand side, and then the medical plan enrollments for 2026. So these are actual enrollment figures. So what you're really seeing here is that big thing to call out is obviously the Kaiser enrollment, not a significant change. From 62.94% to 62.93%, it's handfuls of folks, right? So not significant migration there. What you'll see here is, again, the PPO enrollments are increasing by about 7% compared to 2025. So you'll see that reflected in the Blue Shield PPO plan in the chart on the right-hand side, and that really small sliver that you really kind of can't see. It's represented by about 0.5% that enrolled in the HDHP plan for 2026. And that's, Stephen mentioned, about 120 or so folks. Just to call out the chart, the pie chart on the bottom right, what this is the medical plan mapping. So what folks were mapped to for open enrollment 2026. So this will kind of show migration, and we'll dig into the migration a little bit more in terms of where were folks mapped to where did they actually enroll after the open enrollment period. So you'll see the Kaiser plan it's pretty much unchanged, the mapping in terms of cash in lieu, but you're going to see quite a bit of movement from the mapping in pockets from the Blue Shield and UHC plans, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth on future slides. So this one here, a lot of numbers to reflect. What I want to kind of call out is this is a chart that reflects migration or movement from 2025 into 2026. So what this includes is people that were eligible and enrolled in medical as of 12/31/2025. So that's what's represented on the left-hand side is those are counts from 2025 in those 2025 plans. And this chart reflects the movement into 2026 plans. So the green boxes, just to kind of make this a little easier to view, the green boxes are the highest percentage of enrollments in each of the 2026 plans. So of course, Kaiser, migration to Kaiser, no movement rather, but it's 98.1% of folks that were enrolled in Kaiser in 2025 remained in that plan. So the numbers that are following in the columns to the right-hand side is that's where people went if they didn't enroll in Kaiser, if they were in Kaiser. So top row, that's what you'll see there. So notable here is really, I would say, the Anthem PPO, right? You've got a lot of folks that did choose, 90% of them did choose to enroll in the Blue Shield PPO, but you do have some folks that were about 55% of the HDHP plan enrollments came from the Anthem PPO. So a lot of numbers here. Really, it's for you to kind of dig into as you see fit. If you've got questions, we can certainly take those in a bit or now if anybody wanted to jump in. But really just wanted to kind of explain what this is doing and just kind of showcase kind of how this works and what those numbers mean. So this here is reflecting the medical plan distributions by MOU. So we'll focus on the top quickly to explain what that is. So the very top bar graph is the City of LA projected enrollments. So that was based on the medical plan mapping and as to what folks were mapped to prior to the open enrollment period. And then the bar chart right below it is the City of LA actual enrollment. So all of the city, all MOUs, this reflects the percentages of the true enrollments for 2026 after the open enrollment period had completed. So what you have underneath that is the breakdown by individual MOU. So a lot of numbers here, but I think it's helpful to see. We did typically present this in previous meetings year over year. But based on the fact that the medical plans changed, I think this visual kind of helps folks to see where the individual MOUs kind of vary from the overall city enrollments, right? Just to kind of see the difference in terms of, are there higher PPO enrollments in particular MOU groups, right? Higher cash in lieu, lower. There's quite a variation in terms of some of these medical plans, in terms of Kaiser, cash in lieu, and the PPO. So when you kind of take a look across MOUs, you can certainly see variation. But this is really as a takeaway for folks, unless, you know, any particular MOUs jump out, and you can certainly ask questions when we get to that portion. This slide is reflecting the benchmarking. This is to help you kind of understand where does the city fall in terms of an open enrollment period as it compares to other public sector clients that we have at TELUS Health, as well as some other corporate clients or non-public sector clients, right? So the city does certainly have the longest open enrollment period when you're considering the actual enrollment period and the correction period. So when you combine those two, it's quite a bit longer. While we do support active employees, certainly some of our public sector clients, we support either retirees or perhaps both. But what this is really showing is not just the length of the open enrollment period in general, but also kind of a bit how the city really does give the employees an opportunity to make enrollments. The city also does continue to send out in the mail both personalized enrollment worksheets and confirmation statements, which is not typical. It's a bit more typical for our public sector clients, but it's not typical for all corporate clients to be sending this stuff out in the mail. Some of it's just posted to our portal, and folks are left to self-serve, but just kind of calling out where the city falls in terms of some similar clients. For this slide, we're calling out the enrollment observations from the open enrollment window. So of course, as Stephen mentioned, the open enrollment period was extended to a 6th week. 24% of all enrollments were completed in that 6th week. So while it was 49% of enrollments in the last 2 weeks, last year with a 5-week open enrollment, there were about 44% or about 3,000 people that enrolled in the 5th week. So the 5th week was quite heavy, whereas this year it's extended by an extra week, and about 49% of folks enrolled in those last 2 weeks. So I think that, you know, extending by an extra week gave these folks an opportunity, obviously not just more time to do it, but it actually gave our call center time to, those calls were spread out, right, over the 2-week period. So about 50% of the calls over 2 weeks, as opposed to just that one last week, which is always a pretty significant rush.
Quick question.
Sure.
And this may be for staff. Do you know during which week we told city employees that there would be an extension? Like, when did people find out there would be an extension? Because we didn't start off with that 6 week.
I would need to take a look at my notes
Okay.
to see
If you
when
don't
we
have it
had
offhand, no worries.
notified employees about that. I think we didn't, if I'm not mistaken, we did an email blast notifying employees that the open enrollment period would be extended.
Yeah, but was it during like the 5th week? It was like pretty close to the.
I think
it was during the 5th week. Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious, just because this is like a big number of people during that 6th week, and so I'm wondering, like, would all those people not have enrolled, or did they hear, oh, I have an extra week, and then yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Was that extension given because of the numbers, like you said, or was it because of the late materials available on the website?
I believe it's a combination of a couple of different factors. You know, the number of outreach we were getting, because due to the huge number of benefit changes for 2026 with the medical plan changes, the number of outreach we were doing, the number of calls we were getting from employees for assistance, navigating those changes, we felt it was best to offer that extension.
Prior years, was the material available on day 1 of open enrollment?
In most cases, we do try to make the information available to employees beforehand. So typically, we strive to provide the open enrollment pews to employees in late September. But usually, so sometimes it may they may receive it by early October. For this past open enrollment, we did communicate the changes to employees early on to let them know of what was the changes coming down the line. We also expanded our communication to provide them with more personalized letters and statements about how their benefits were going to be affected. So communication was done, I believe, as early as June, July.
Thank you.
So we can actually just quickly talk about the call center performance here. So really happy to say this was a dramatic improvement from prior plan years, prior open enrollments. So while we're happy to say that we met the performance guarantee, so we actually answered all calls. So the chart is representing all ongoing and open enrollment calls. So if folks were not calling in about open enrollment, all of those calls included the average speed to answer was about 32 seconds. So our performance guarantee is 90% within a minute. So that's great. But there's also calling out there for actually only open enrollment calls is about 10 seconds. So 95.72% within a minute, 10 seconds is the average for just open enrollment calls. And again, that's, I think, a lot of that is due to that callback threshold. Yep. So aside from that, we've got some stats indicating that we've added about 16 additional reps for that open enrollment period. But a lot of that was done with workforce management planning prior to the open enrollment period. So we increased that quite a bit. So I'll not spend a ton of time here. I'm just kind of calling out that this is a call center survey. So the goal here for our performance target is 90% of overall satisfaction for folks that are taking the IVR call survey. So about 31% of callers did take that survey. And, you know, happy to say that 97.76% were either very satisfied or satisfied. So a comparison client there is about 95% for a client of this type and size. So we're certainly exceeding the mark there. I won't spend too much time on this. This is really just our service center performance. So this is our portal or website activity. So one thing I do want to call out is that about 81% of the city's active enrollments were completed online. So they may have even called into the service center, but they did complete their enrollment online. So it's actually not an increase or a decrease from prior years. It's exactly the same. So another thing I will call out, though, is we did have about a 23% increase in the unique users that were logging into our portal. So if you look at the chart on the bottom left-hand side, that's a number of employee logins, and the one right to the right of it is the unique logins. So it's pretty significant to have a 23% increase. So a lot of folks were, hearing about open enrollment, logging on, and taking action themselves. And then quickly, just a couple of stats here about, we do have our automated virtual assistant, which we call Ava. That is not an actual person behind the chat. That is just a chat that they can ask general questions, right? So 58% of all inquiries into Ava were taken in October, November. So most of the activity throughout the year using Ava is done in October and November. But the information below, the chat unique users by month. So this is actually a chat representative that is speaking to someone real time when they use that feature on our portal. So we actually had a total of unanswered chats of 7 chats, but there's not a threshold, right? If somebody immediately starts a chat and then ends it, it's considered an unanswered chat. So even if it was 1 second later and the user dropped the chat. So essentially folks were chatting into our call center representatives about annual enrollment for the most part during that period of time. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Daryl to discuss our enhancements timeline.
Thanks, Amy. I know I have about 45 seconds, so I will be quick. Daryl Brooks, Client Relationship Leader. I have the overall responsibility for this account at TELUS Health. So regardless of what the function is, everything, runs up through me with respects to overall accountability. And so with all of this stuff that Amy talked about, right, we had a really successful open enrollment in our opinion. And with the changes, Amy was able to work really closely with Paul and Chung. So I do want to say thank you to all of you all for the partnership. And I know stuck really close. We had consistent calls, all the time, maybe multiple touch bases throughout the week. With that, we are going to be putting some enhancements in place this next year, right? As benefits change and demands of the industries change, we want to make sure that we are modernizing what's available to employees, to the city staff, in accordance with those modernizations. So one thing that is in flight right now is the mobile app. We are in the final stages of that app, and we expect that to go to production here within this month. Online billing is shortly following the mobile app rollout at the end of this month. AVA, we call it AVA 2.0, but that's the ability for employees to chat directly in the system, the portal, and it will be available, they will have the ability to chat directly within the portal, and the responses that they get will actually reference the documents that are available within the site. So they'll get real-time responses that reference the true material, the documentation that we have within our portal for your plan information. Member communication preference, we are going to be offering email or paper. Some people want to only receive email communications, and we'll be rolling that out later this year. Member enrollment portal, communication portal. We really want TELUS to be a hub for all communications, and that's one of the things that we're working on with respects to enhancements this third quarter of this year. So that'll be coming as well. Plan sponsor portal, which is an expansion of reporting capabilities within the system that'll be available to Paul, Chung, and your staff who are users within the system. And then text messaging. Everyone has a phone today, and people like to receive alerts and have them sent to them immediately. And we'll be including that as one of the enhancements within this year as well. I know I spoke very fast. I tried to get a lot of information in with a little bit of time, but again, I want to say thank you to everyone for your partnership. We really, really appreciate it.
A question just briefly. Not familiar with the background on the enhancements, but could you just tell a little bit about what the mobile app is and what the online billing payment is for
Sure.
those who don't know?
Yes, sure. So the mobile app is going to be essentially your portal, just available, accessible through the phone. So you'll be able to process the same types of events that you would online, just on your phone. You'll be able to access the documents on your phone as well. Online billing, that's for individuals who are out on some type of a leave and they want to make a payment online via ACH.
Thank you.
Sure.
Todd, just to add on to that. So in a situation where we are unable to take the subsidies, we take the deductions out of an employee's paycheck, or they don't meet requirements and, they are placed on direct bill, we are looking at this online billing payment enhancement as a way to make it easier for employees to submit payments to the city.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 9, which is a legislative update, California Senate Bill 729, SB 729.
Hello. I'm Terry Graff with Keenan, and I know this is kind of a long-awaited update on SB 729, the infertility benefits, and we want to move on to the next slide. So we'll just kind of start off with what it is in general. So last year, the governor signed into law expansion of the fertility benefits. So pretty much most plans without any kind of fertility rider only covered the diagnosis of infertility, but not the treatment. So this law adds in, expands the definition of infertility and the eligibility for that, and then also expands that coverage to the actual treatment of infertility. So there's still some things that are outstanding, and we'll kind of touch on that. But one of the things that was defined is that infertility was expanded. So it's now inclusive of single individuals and LGBTQ plus individuals. So it's not just opposite sex couples, partners. So that's the main thing going on with the definition. And then also anybody that has the inability to reproduce without some type of medical intervention. So again, more inclusive. And then it also touches on the recurrent pregnancy loss. So if you go through infertility treatments, you have success, you have a baby, later on, you could actually use the benefit again, or if you've lost a baby, you can try several times through this program. The California Department of Managed Care is basically the one or the overall department that is giving the guidance on this. And that's part of the problem, is that this law came out and then it's like, how are we actually going to do this? So the Department of Managed Care issued what's called an all plans letter at the end of 2025, so December 30th. And so that didn't really give the carriers time to position themselves and figure out exactly how they were going to put the wording of this into their plans. And all of their plans have to be filed and approved with the Department of Managed Care. So that's kind of been what has stalled out hearing more about this benefit.
Just a quick note to kind of add some color to that. This is Megan, also with Keenan. As recently as last week, the Department of Managed Healthcare issued a revision to that all plan letter, providing additional clarity. So it has been a little bit of a moving target for carriers to try and administer when there is a little bit of lack of clarity in the legislation, but they are working very hard on that. So that did come out last week. Just even as we had drafted this report, and added a little bit of a change to what we had included, and added some guardrails around a few of the benefits that we're going to talk about today. I'm sorry.
No, perfect. So really, for the city, being a large employer that has a fully insured plan, and large employers are defined as having 100 employees or more. So all of your plans are fully insured at this time. And so all of them fall under this benefit. And so large employers that are self-funded are not impacted by this. They can make the decision whether or not to include these benefits, but they don't have to. Same with small employers. The carriers do have to offer options for those small employers that include these infertility benefits, but they don't actually have to offer them as employers don't have to offer them that are under 100. There are some exceptions, and one of them being CalPERS. So CalPERS, they don't have to comply with this until July of next year. So there has been a little bit of room for them. So if we look at kind of focusing on, this is the before and after benefits, really focusing on after. And so what's happening now for 2026, the new mandate applies to infertility. It includes IVF coverage for all those fully insured group-sponsored plans. For the definition, like I said, it initially was a little more narrow and did not include singles and LGBTQ+, and so that is now part of what is covered. IVF coverage, not required previously. Now that is mandatory benefit, and as well as embryo transfers, oocyte retrievals, and fertility medications. So all of that is included. In terms of the cost sharing for individuals, it's these plans have got to have parity. So that means anything that, if you have a office visit copay for an infertility benefit, it has to be the same as an office visit copay for something else, right? So parity within the plans. And then also just network in terms of network requirements. There's no obligation for the carriers now because that hasn't really been a benefit that's been covered for the most part. And so the carriers have to coordinate with the provider networks and try to start including those carriers and providers within their network. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge for them because traditionally they have not been contracted with the carriers for these services. So they are working on that and expanding their networks. So in terms of the carrier updates, I mean, this is just in terms of the moving target that it's been. We put out this report and asked each of the carriers, Blue Shield, Kaiser, and UHC, to give us kind of a current statement where they are at. And it's already changed because a week ago, after we provided this and posted this report, things have changed. We've got the new letter, all plan letter from JLMBC, but you'll see that Blue Shield is basically, their plan was originally approved, and then they had to, now that there was the letter that came out at the end of December, now we have to go back and say, hey, how does this change things for us? What do we want to put into the plan? And what they have to do is go through the approval of getting their new language approved. So once those requirements, or once everything has been kind of updated and approved, they're going to have to send out updated summary of benefits, EOCs, so all of that stuff will have to be updated. We go to the next slide, that kind of gives you a really a better idea of the actual benefits. So artificial inseminations, if you are under the PPO or the high deductible health plan, that's going to be covered just like other benefits. So you would have a deductible, and then you would be covered 10%, or you'd pay 10% for in-network services, or 30% if you went out of network. And for the artificial inseminations, those are going to be limited to 6 per lifetime. One of the things that just came out in the revised letter last week is that they're putting in more language around lifetime maximums. And so this could change. We could see a change in this. For the oocyte retrievals, right now, again, it's subject to the deductible and 10% in network, 30% out of network, and those are covered 3 per lifetime. And then the embryo transfers and IVF are covered at the same in and out of network, subject to deductible. No lifetime maximums or any maximums on those. And then for fertility medications, again, it's going to be covered just like any other drug would be, depending on the tier that it falls into. So kind of same with on the HMO. There's the lifetime maximums, but then no co-pays on any of those benefits. So that's kind of where Blue Shield stands at this point, but we need to caveat that by saying, this is subject to change. All of the benefits we go over are subject to change right now based on the latest letter that came out. For Kaiser, there wasn't any additional information when we went, when we asked everybody to kind of get back to us on where they stand. So they're still waiting for approved language. If we go to the next slide, we do have copays for the different things here. And one of the things that Kaiser had kind of updated on these slides, they updated, but the updates did not make it into this presentation before they were posted. So essentially, the copays could be in place, but it's not per visit, it's per procedure. And so if there were, these could be procedures or they could be office visit, it could, whatever that is, it could be either an office visit copay or it actually could be no pay copay, depending on if it's an inpatient service as well. In terms of United Healthcare, they're kind of in the same boat, same thing where, they're waiting on their, what was approved already. Now there could be new language impacted. They have, concerns about prior authorization, just making sure that that's called out because this isn't something that you can just go and do without getting prior authorization. And again, they're anticipating that they will have, more providers. They're working on that contracting to expand the network in these benefits. And if we look on the final slide, these are the copays and limitations as they stand now. So $15 copay for the oocyte and up to 3 retrievals per lifetime. And then the embryo transfers and IVF and just the 2 of those are set at that $15 copay. And the IVF has a limit of 6 procedures per lifetime. And again, we just got that new letter from the DMC that does have some limitations or better language on what the lifetime maximums could be. So one of the things that we had asked carriers is, what are they seeing in terms of percentage of membership that has in the past used some type of fertility in terms of diagnosis. And UHC did get back to us in terms of Southern California, their Southern California book of business, and it was around 2.28, so a little less than 3%. And when the carriers were building this into their pricing, we were seeing between 1.5% to 2% increases to accommodate for this. So that's kind of where it stands. We will have more information once the carriers go through this latest letter, all plans letter. And so they're able to finalize their language and then get approval again through the Department of Managed Care.
They're staying very close to it. It's something that they are very cognizant of, and they're all very anxious to get it finalized. It's very hard for them to provide care when it's a gray area. So they are all weekly giving us updates, and we're checking in as is the city, and just ensuring that they're staying close to it. The all plan letter was helpful, but there's still a couple of things that we need to kind of dial in, and they have to get filed. So there's more to come for sure.
The important thing, though, is that if there are members that want to seek these services now, they can. So it's not like, oh, you have to wait until all of this is finalized and then we'll talk. So, they're just handling it on a case by case basis and talking to them about, what the cost would be, estimated cost would be. So.
In reviewing the slides, it seems like Kaiser's update is significantly different than Blue Shield's and I'm sorry, I forgot who was the third provider.
UHC.
Yeah, UHC. Thank you. I had a mental block. Where Blue Shield has submitted a plan that's initially been approved and then had it, I guess, having them review it again after the second directive came out. Kaiser just kind of looks like they're just taking a wait and see approach. Is that something we should be concerned about, or is my perception wrong that it's markedly different than, say, Blue Shield's approach to SB 729?
Kaiser has been very active in trying to get their plan filed. They have many things. They have submitted something. It has been under review, and they have been working with their attorneys and the DMHC. I believe they even had a meeting very recently with them to get clarification. I think, in terms of what's been published, and there's a lot of activity and updates last week that we received that didn't make it in because of some of the updates that we had. But Kaiser has been very, very active in terms of getting this sorted. They do have the large majority of your membership, and so for them, they hear probably from your members more than the other two carriers at present because of economies of scale. And they shared with us, they're trying to make sure they get this right because this is a very nuanced journey for folks who are impacted by it, and no two cases are the same. And so they want to make sure they understand how to appropriately provide care for those members. And those meetings with the DMHC are active and ongoing. And they will be. You'll see confetti from their office the second they get the word that their language is approved for sure.
Thank you. Who's ultimately responsible for compliance, and is there any concern with not being in compliance at this point in time?
So the plans are fully insured, so the carriers have to ensure that they are compliant. And the city does have oversight because they are the purchasers of the plan, and so they are actively keeping an eye on this. Unfortunately, this is not the first time something like this has happened where there's been a mandate and there's a little less clarity in how to proceed. And so the DMHC kind of rubs along with the carriers to make sure that ultimately they're providing clarity that's needed for that compliance. A lot of the carriers do keep an eye on the effective date and time of services that are provided, and often will look at those even once clarity comes in. So it is very much a team sport right now, with the DMHC playing a very large role at quarterback so that the carriers can make sure that they are providing the compliant services that are required.
So if there was a member that was looking for these types of services, but it currently has not been finalized in terms of these plans, how will they treat that member, and how will that individual know what's available to them?
Yeah, I would believe they would be working with the carriers at that point. I know the carriers are actively tracking requests and claims that are coming in to kind of keep an eye on that. And I believe Blue Shield and UHC, they don't have a lot of noise. In fact, I was just speaking with you just now. They've got not a single inquiry. I believe Kaiser may have a couple more, but they are actively tracking those, as well as the city is getting questions and calls as well, right?
We have logs of inquiries about that, and so we have been responding accordingly. But I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many inquiries we have, but it hasn't been that many. But we do have a fair number of employees who've been fairly consistent about inquiring every few months as to the status of this implementation.
So if someone wanted to pursue this now, would they have to wait, or could they begin and be covered now?
They should and could begin. It is sometimes quite a long journey. And the process of getting diagnosed can take some time, but I think those types of treatments and options are available now and have the clarity that's needed. But and again, with the parity copay, that will come. The DMHC is providing clarification on a number of fronts, and the carriers are doing their best to ensure compliance at this point in time. But if somebody is impacted by that, I would say they probably could start now. I wouldn't, as Terry said, it doesn't make sense to wait, because to kick this off, you ultimately do need a diagnosis, and that can take quite a bit of time, for sure.
Somebody was already seeking this treatment before January, right, on their own. Do they still have to start from the beginning with the providers?
I believe it's going to depend on the carrier, but they should have provider notes and conversations to support kind of where they're at in their journey. And with the coverage taking effect January 1 and the clarifications that have come out, I don't believe they would have to start over from scratch. I'm gonna
I mean, with like diagnosis and all that, or that.
They wouldn't have to start from scratch.
Okay.
Part of the scenario is where they are in their journey. So depending on the provider, where they are, whether it was consultative or they started labs, then the provider would take over from there to see and possibly ask questions from the previous provider. The only thing that may happen is updated labs and consultative sessions that would take place in these things that happen. Usually this journey can be anywhere from 6 months, 12 months, or years, depending on where that individual is.
So there may be additional testing that they could do for additional treatment options that are now available. They may have to go that route for those, but anything that they've had done previously would be looked at, so they wouldn't be starting necessarily from ground zero. That's helpful.
Would there be retroactive, like if they didn't come to Kaiser till like February, but they had treatments in January?
Retroactive, and as long as the treatments actually occurred after January
Mhm,
26, then it would be under the coverage that's mandated. Any coverage any treatments prior to January 1, 2026 would not be under the mandate. But yeah, anything after January 1, 2026, whether it's a consultation, a procedure, and then again, everyone's journey is different. For like egg retrieval, some may have an outpatient procedure, others may require actually hospitalization. So it depends on what their needs are and what their severity will go to. But it would be after January 1, 2026.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
Move-
you. Very helpful.
We'll move to agenda item number 10, Committee Report 2609, Projects and Activities.
Okay. So this report covers the period of between December and February. So on page 1, we have an update on the ongoing strike at Kaiser. So Kaiser has been in negotiations on a number of national and local contracts over the past few months. And while they have successfully completed negotiations on a number of them, they do still have negotiations remaining that they are working on. Of which there have been 2 strikes arising. One is involving the UFCW strike, which was just for a short duration, and the other, which is still ongoing as of this report, was the strike involving the UNAC/UHCP unions. Kaiser has taken steps to minimize the impact to members. Moving on over to page 2 is an update regarding of a Kaiser contract with the Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital. So for a number of years now, Kaiser has had a contractual relationship with this hospital. That contract has expired, and while members are able to still utilize that hospital for emergency care, members who had received referred services at the Henry Mayo Hospital have been notified of the change, and any provided services any ongoing services will be provided at a Kaiser facility or another Kaiser contracted facility going forward. Moving on down to the bottom is an update on the Affordable Care Act. So in late January, about 45,000 ACA 1095 tax forms were processed and mailed out to employees. Following the mailing, staff became aware of 2 issues that affected a relatively small number of employees. The first was regarding enrolled dependents. For this group of employees, their dependents were not listed on the forms. This has been fixed, and new forms have been mailed out to the affected employees. The second issue was involving the mailing address for a number of employees where their 2025 address change may not necessarily have been captured during processing. This issue has been corrected, and new forms were also mailed out to these employees. And as for this particular group, most employees that we've talked to, they did end up receiving their forms because it was forwarded from their prior address. But just to be safe, we still mailed out the forms to employees, and the forms are also available for employees to request a replacement form. And lastly, just to ensure that we are not going to be coming across these issues again, we're in the process of making changes to our processing steps to make checks for these issues, for next year. And lastly, we have a staffing update. So currently, we have 2 vacant positions within the employee benefits division. The accounting record supervisor and the accounting clerk position. We are just recently held interviews for the accounting record supervisor, so we hope to have an offer made fairly soon, and then we will, begin. We will hope we'll take additional steps to fill the vacant accounting clerk positions next. And that brings us to the end of this report. I'm happy to answer any questions and take any items you may have for future calendar agenda.
All right. So no future agenda items. Our next regular meetings are April 2nd, 2026 and May 7th, 2026. And with that, we close the meeting.
Thank you all.
Cancel last time? No, we were here. No, yeah.
All right, see you.
That's where you got your appointment, ma'am.
Good. That was terrible. Yes, here we go.
No.